Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you new here, my name is Donna, and for those of you not new, thank you so much for continuing to come back and support me. I appreciate all of you so very much for being here. Welcome to another episode of the Palette Roulette series, in which I let an app choose a palette for me, and then I come back to you the next week and talk about the palette. So this is Palette Roulette video, episode 59, I believe it is. So a little over a year we've done this. We've used, I think in 2 episodes we used 2 different palettes, so we have used a total of 61 palettes so far this year, and a year and a little bit of doing these Palette Roulette series, and I really enjoy this. I am really having a good time. I make these videos even though they're not the most watched on my channel, just because I enjoy it. I enjoy using my palettes, figuring out my makeup style, my makeup aesthetic, figuring out what I love and hate about some things. And yeah, this week's palette was actually the NYX Air, which was one of the In Your Element palettes that was put out last year, I think. Was it last year? I can't remember if it was last year. It was a limited edition palette. There were 6 of them that went along with the elements like earth, wind, fire, air, metal. I can't remember the rest. And they were really pushed by the fact that they had influencer backing. So like Samantha Ravindal did earth, Crispy did metal, I believe. This one was Alyssa Ashley. What I will say is that her look that came from this palette was a lot more vibrant than what I was able to get out of this palette. I did a get ready with me with this palette last week. It was supposed to go up on one of the days that I am missing a video, and the reason why it didn't go up is because there was no freaking way I was posting that video. This palette and we just did not get along. We didn't get along, and that's okay. Makeup is subjective, and sometimes people are gonna get along with makeup you don't get along with, and they're gonna not get along with makeup that you do get along with. It's totally okay for us to have differing opinions. So if you have this palette and you love it, good for you. I enjoy that you love this palette. I didn't get along with it at all. So this palette does have 4.4 stars on Amazon. It does have 4.3 stars on the little Google, like when you Google a palette and it shows up on the side of your Google screen and tells you how many, what about the palette, where you can purchase it and whatnot. It does have 4.3 stars there. That one has about 217 reviews. The one on Amazon with the 4.4 stars only has 6 reviews. So these 6 people on the planet that loved this palette, sorry, reviewed it on Google. So there's that. It is a cruelty-free palette. They originally cost $30. $30 for NYX. That is insane. This is supposed to be a drugstore palette. I remember when they first came out, that was part of the reason why I didn't purchase any of them when they first came out, because they were $30 and they were NYX, and there is 12 shadows in here, and I'm sorry, but I am not paying $30 for 12 NYX shadows. I'm just not. I've not had the best of luck with NYX shadows anyway. I do have the NYX Brights palette. I haven't yet used that. It is in my collection. It'll probably come up in this Palette Roulette series at some point. I also had the, I think, metal version of, they came out with like steampunk ones as well. I didn't necessarily not get along with that shadow palette, but I also didn't get along with that shadow palette. I will go ahead and link that Palette Roulette up in the cards so that you guys can see what I went through with that palette. But NYX shadows and I don't necessarily always get along. I love that this is cruelty free. I love that it was backed by influencers, and Alyssa Ashley is cute and funny, and I do like her a lot. I love that Samantha Ravndal was in on the campaign. I watch her every single day, but this just wasn't it. This wasn't it. This wasn't a great palette. So the exterior packaging is beautiful. It is plastic. It's beautiful. It's got this really pretty, you know, like pastel-y nature about it, and it's clouds, and it really looks like air on the front of it. So you guys can see it. I really think that it really resonates air. Then you open it up, and it also really resonates air. It resonates what's on the front of the palette. It is a beautiful palette inside. It looks beautiful inside. It does have a nice size mirror. On the back of the palette, it does have like the you know, ingredients of the product, as well as a little like schematic here of what the palette looks like, but there are no names of these shades. So they're just numbered 1 through 12, and there's no names listed on the palette at all for those numbers 1 through 12. It does tell you the differences in the ingredients dependent on these shades that you're looking at. So down here you have ingredients in 3, 9, 11, and 12, and up here are the ingredients of all the other shades. This, right off the bat, you know, is not a palette that you can use on its own unless you want to really, like, you know, resonate the 80s child in you, which is why I didn't post that get ready with me, honestly, because I really felt like I looked like I was trying to channel the 80s child in me, which in the 80s I was not even in my 10s yet. So, you know, there's that. Until late 80s, I guess. But I will say that the pigmentation in this palette is better than the pigmentation that I've seen with other NYX shadows. So as far as pigmentation and blendability go, this has great pigmentation and blendability. This shade here, I mean, that is crazy awesome pigmentation. But then you get into this silver, which looks great on my finger, but once it goes on to an eye look, it just kind of disappears. There's not a whole lot of pigmentation there. I used this yellow number 2 a lot as a, well, I shouldn't say a lot. So let's start with this. I used this palette 3 times. The first 2 times I used it, my eyeballs burned so badly. And I don't have that reaction to a lot. And in addition to that, I wasn't using this palette with other products that I've not used on my eyes over the last several months. So I know that it's something in these shadows. The third time I used it, I had it on my eyes for a few minutes. It started to irritate my eyes. I took it off. I could still feel the irritation in my eyes hours later, even though the makeup had been on my eye for a couple minutes, and I wiped it off. So when I did use this palette, I used this yellow shade as a set for my primer. It is the shade I used for setting. This pink shade here, I used in my brow bone and my inner corner almost every single time I used it, because it is basically the only one in this palette that you can really use for a brow bone shade, unless you use this one, but then this one kind of sways a little purple. So I didn't really want purple in my brow bone. This one is more white in nature. You can even tell that on my finger. So I just swiped it across the silver. That's cool. So you can, but look, you can't even tell the difference between the silver and the pink in this palette. So when I say that Alyssa Ashley's shadow in her picture, which I can put up here, is more bold than what I was able to get out of this palette, I'm like, I don't understand where she got that really dark purple that's in her eye look. You would think is this one here, but this is not I mean, it looks like periwinkle. It's super periwinkle, and it's not as brilliant as it is on her eyes. So I'm just not really sure where that eye look came from, because I don't think it came from this palette. I could be wrong. I've been known to be wrong. All the space in the palette is used, which I appreciate. I appreciate all the space in the palette used. I just wish that they did have names and not numbers 1 through 12. I like to have names for my palette. That's also a pet peeve of mine, and that's just personal preference. It is just me. It is whatever, and that's such a stupid thing to be pissy about in a palette, and it's really not something I'm pissy about. It's just something that I noted. There's a lot of redundancy here. Number 1 here and number 8 here could look the very same. So we have this shade here and this shade here. They could look the very same on the eye. The only thing is this one leans a little more lavender and this one leans a little more pink, but actually shows up, both of them show up a little more white on your eye look. There's a lot of peach in here that actually looks quite similar on the eye. And these 2 shades here, this one here and this one here, even though one looks more purple, one looks more blue, they both are very periwinkle. So with that being said, these two first shades that I pointed out, 1 and 8, this is 1 and this is 8. You see one's a little more purple and one's a little more pink, but in your eye look, once they're blended out, they look very much the same. Okay, and then we can take all the corals. So let's take this one, and this one. That's them on the finger, and there is quite a bit of differentiation with them, right? We have, I think that's wet. I'm going to go on my palm because that's wet. That one, and that one. Do you see how similar they are in your eye? They look the exact same. And I know that you guys can't see them, but there's dust falling from these shades. They're also very, very dusty. All right, then let's do this purple and that periwinkle blue over there. On the fingers, one looks a lot more blue than the other one. On the hand, it looks a lot more blue than the other one. But on the eye, once blended out, they look too similar. They look too similar. That purple is also supposed to be a shimmer, and I just found that the shimmers in this palette were just awful. Wetting them, which I do with every single shimmer, just made them worse. They became chunky when wet and would fall onto your face in chunks instead of just little powder pieces that you could easily wipe away. The chunks were super hard to actually just wipe away. They wouldn't wipe away without smearing all over your face. I did not have a good time with this palette. Each pan in here is 0.05 ounces, which is pretty standard for a pan. I would say that this works much better with a primer than it doesn't. And I would also say that you're better off getting pastels from an indie brand or somewhere else. I am so glad that I picked this palette up at Ross, I think, or TJ Maxx, one of those stores. I think I told you that when I pulled the palette last week. I ended up purchasing it for $7. I'm telling you, if I had purchased it for $30, which I wouldn't have done because it's a NYX palette. If I had purchased it for $30 and had this hard of a time with it, I would be pissed. I would be pissed. And I feel sorry for those that picked these palettes up when they first came out, because I just cannot. This pink here was probably my favorite in the palette. I have one picture for you. One. And I'm going to put it right here. And the reason why I only have one is because, like I told you guys, I wore this palette probably 3 times. And The second time I wore it was in that Get Ready With Me, and I was pissed off at how that look came out. There just was no way that I was posting it, nor was I taking a picture. It was awful. I used the blue and the purple, and I used this mint green in there, and it just came out. I looked like an 80s love child. And it was awful. There was no pigmentation to it whatsoever. It looked awful. And maybe I'm just a person that looks horrible in pastel. That's totally a maybe. That might be the problem. But this is not a palette that you can use on its own. I think that it would be a great palette to use for blending out other matte shadows. So like if I was using a really vibrant hot pink and wanted to put like a periwinkle over the top of it, I might dig into this palette to get this light blue here and put it over the top of that to kind of create like this purple periwinkle vibe over the top of it. It'd be a great palette for those purposes, but not a palette that I'm going to keep in my collection just for those purposes. My little 8-year-old daughter loves it. What this has taught me about pastels is, again, maybe I'm just not the person for pastels. I have been wanting that sugar pill palette that you can get at Ulta. It's never in stock. Never in stock, so I haven't purchased it yet, and it's only online, so it's not in any of the stores that I'm in. I may not pick up that palette after all, because it is mostly pastels, and I just don't know if it's a palette that I would get along with. I do love the mirror in this palette. I love that there's no wasted space in this palette. I love how beautiful the packaging is. I don't love the palette. It's just not my favorite. So let's just talk a little bit about the shades in the palette. So we have, I'm going to hold it like this because that's how I have them numbered. We have 1 through 4, 5 through 8, and then 9 through 12, right? So number 1 is a light peach shimmer. I did swatch that for you, so I'm not going to do it again. And also, it's not a shimmer. So I don't know why they're calling it a shimmer. Number 2 is a light yellow matte. I don't think I swatched that one for you, but that is it right there. Again, it just is a light yellow matte. It performs really well as a setting powder for any eye base that you use. It doesn't really show up yellow. It shows up more like cream or skin toned. Then we have number 3, which is a peach matte, which I also swatched for you. And then number 4 over here, which is a violet shimmer. Again, it's supposed to be shimmer, not a shimmer. Number 5, here is a light blue matte. Looks more periwinkle, like purplish. This one here is a mint matte. Again, mint matte. Looks mint. It is a matte. It's pretty. I wanted to love it. It matches my hair. I didn't love it. The next one is it's categorized as a white shimmer. I think of it more as like a silver, but it doesn't perform as a shimmer as what it's supposed to be. It's not really, it's probably the most shimmer in the palette, but it's still not super shimmery. So this one here is that light peach satin. It's supposed to be a light peach satin, light peach satin. Do you remember me swatching that? How purple it was? It's definitely not peach. Satin would have been the appropriate term for the shimmers in this palette. I think that it performs like a satin. It's more of a duochrome though, I would say. It's got kind of like a white violet shift. There is no peach about this shadow. This one is an orange matte. It's more peachy than orange. This is a lilac shimmer. This, I would say, is the second most shimmery in the palette. So first being this one, that one being second. It does have a little bit of shimmerness to it, but can look very much like this one when put on the eye. It's just a little tad bit lighter. This one, my favorite, is the bright fuchsia matte color. And then this one here is a peach satin. And there's just so much redundancy. So much redundancy. None of the shimmers actually perform as a shimmer. More satin than shimmer. I think that that would have been the appropriate term, like I said, for all the quote-unquote shimmers in the palette. It's just not my favorite. It will be leaving my collection. No holds barred. I couldn't even get through a week of it. Like, I couldn't, like, halfway through the week, I was like, can I just film another palette roulette video? I make rules. I could have just filmed another one, but I felt like I was cheating in some way. So there's that. Yeah. So that's what I got for you. So let's move on. We are going to pick another palette. For those of you who do not know, I do have a Samsung Note 9. I am strictly Android. My man is trying to talk me into a MacBook. I don't even know about that. But I use the Decide Now app. It's just a Wheel of Fortune type app. The channel that I pulled inspiration from, she does have an iPhone. She uses the iOS system. She got the same kind of app out of your guys's app store. It's just a Wheel of Fortune app that helps you decide things. I put all of my palettes into it. As we use them, I take them out. As I get new ones in, I put them in. Eventually, we will get through all the palettes. I promise you. But to spin it, you just press the button here. Oh, that wasn't a very good spin. So we are going to spin again because that wasn't a very good spin. You know what's funny is, I know that you guys didn't see it, but I did because it was facing me. That not good spin, this is the same palette it landed on. This is the Violet Voss Fruit Sorbet. It's a mini palette, but it does have 10 shades in it. So let me go get that. I will be right back. All right, so this is a relatively new palette in my collection. It is one that I got from Ipsy. I think it was an add-on from Ipsy. It's still sealed in the box. So this is the Fruit Sorbet palette. This is what the box looks like. That is what the palette looks like. See the big X on it? So that I can't take it back to the store. Not that I ever would. I love Violet Voss. But these are the colors in that palette. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the palette that we just used, only a more bright version. I'm going to go cut this, like the tape on the box, the seal on the box. I'll be right back. So this is the palette. Again, little tiny fun size palette. And this is the inside. That is what it is. Super bright colors. I am super hopeful for this palette. It does have a mirror. I really dig that there is kind of a black and a white in here. What I will say is I thought it was all shimmers. There's some mattes in there, so I'm excited about that because I thought it was all shimmer. I also love that there's a nice like setting shade in there. For me, a palette needs to have a super deepening shade, a nice setting shade, and a brow bone shade, and I feel like that white would be a great brow bone shade. The only thing I don't like about this is it is a shimmer, so it might not work super great for like deepening up a look. The deepest shades in here, except for this one here, are shimmers. So these aren't super deep. So I would probably deepen a look with one of these three here, and that one's the only matte. But that's okay. We will figure it out. And I always have my singles as well. So I've been using singles a lot. On my eyes today is all Sydney Grace singles because I love Sydney Grace, and there was no effing way I was using this. I think this is only the third Palette Roulette video that I've come to not wearing the palette that I had for the week. So there's that. I am excited to use this next week. I'm more excited to come to you and talk to you about the palette. I did pick it up for a discounted price through Ipsy. It was an add-on to one of my Ipsy bags. And I was so excited to get it because I love Violet Voss's formula. So I am excited to use it, and I can't wait to come back to you and talk to you guys next week. I hope that you liked this video. I hope that if you did, that you're considering giving it a big thumbs up. It really does help us out here, and it's totally free to you. It's also totally free to you to subscribe to my channel. I hope that you want to stick around. I hope that you like me or this video enough that you think that you want to take part in hearing about my life on a regular and the palettes that I'm using on a regular. I thank you guys so much for joining me today. Hopefully your December is treating you well. This is the last Palette Roulette of the year, and I am excited to go into next year with some new content, new ideas, and whatnot. I will be doing a channel goals video sometime early next month. I'm excited about that video. I hope that you'll want to stick around. I do typically upload content 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the comments section. Thanks so much again for joining me, and until next time, bye guys.